Okay. So today I'm going to be breaking down Saturn return and the aspect of Saturn and the challenges of Saturn. Now, Saturn brings a lot of obstructions, and he can either be your friend or your enemy, and it's all to do with what you do, how you do it, and what have you learnt. And so basically one of the aspects of that, which I'm going to gather from a book which I like, this is one of the most powerful lines that comes in conjunction. But first and foremost, say you had an apple, no, not an apple, an ice cream, and it's got dairy in it, and you're a vegan, and you decide to have the dairy. You're trying to be a vegan as opposed to a vegetarian. And so you're like, I'm going to have this, this ice cream. I know it's got dairy, I've got eczema, and it's causing me skin issues, but I love the ice cream. So you have the ice cream in the evening. In the morning you wake up and you feel itchy. So you knew what you were supposed to do, not to have the ice cream, but you had it anyways. So that's the lesson that Lord of Karma does, Saturn. And we're going to break down the esoteric meaning, the deeper methods, the understanding, what people don't speak about Saturn. I'm going to talk about the layers of Saturn in relations to what Saturn means really in mythology and why he represents that figure. And so there's a line that I wanted to read from this book. So an Indian woman once said, "We are punished not for our actions, but by our actions." Okay, therefore means what we do when we have wisdom, we are judged by that. So we are punished not for our action, but by our action. Each of our offenses against wisdom seeds the reaction that follows. So if something happens to you and you knew better, then you know why it happened to you, as opposed to just doing it. So the lesson gives you a whole ring. It gives you a whole ring range of 28 years to 30 years. And that's what Saturn does. And it always gives you that. For those that are born at an early age and just end up dying a bit earlier, it's because a lot of the time there was other karmic issues based upon previous lives. And the karmic effect had to be finished at that time. And then obviously it follows through. But then you have to look at someone's chart to kind of detail and deeply go into that aspect of things. So now I'm going to talk about the mythology so you understand where we're going. And basically in that mythology, we're going to go deeper into who Saturn really is, as opposed to what people think Saturn is, and that's where we get deep into the science. So in the Vedic scriptures, they talk about the sun, the actual sun in the sky, which is obviously the light, and your star sign, which obviously we are in the month of Cancer, Leo, and obviously that energy is obviously where the sun is. Now the sun in Vedic astrology is called Surya, and Surya basically had a wife, and his wife was Sanjana. Okay, so Sanjana became incapable of bearing the heat of the sun, and so she generated, so like in mythology, she couldn't bear the heat of the sun, so she generated her darker side, which is Chaya, as her own form of illusion, and asked her to be the sun's wife. The sun's wife. So she created a dark side. She faced the sun in a different side. So basically, what she then went back to her father's house, Sanjaya, the son, and then 3 children were born to Chaya. Her dark side. So her dark side, there was 3 children that was born, and one of the children was Saturn. And so Saturn became the dark side, or the shadow of the sun. The actual sun, wife couldn't bear the heat, so she formed another illusion side of herself, which was her shadow, and that shadow became Saturn, one of her sons. She had other sons too. Now, this lets us know that basically what is happening here is that Saturn in itself was actually a particular sun, and it became dark because it couldn't handle the ego side of itself. So it could be saying many other things, but in relations to what I'm kind of understanding from this mythological script is that the sun was so egocentric, should we say, that it projected itself into its wife, and then this wife couldn't handle the heat, so she couldn't see herself clearly, so she generated a dark side, and the dark side was manifestation of Saturn. And this is one of the reasons why Saturn would be the Lord, because he would have understood the darker aspect, and now because he's shined his ego, he now has to face the dark aspect of itself. And this is where Saturn comes through. Now, in this respect, we could say that Saturn, obviously, according to Alice Bailey's and other people who have spoken about this, they used to say that Saturn was once a sun. It was actually a sun shining, gleaming. And then Saturn became Saturn, the father. This is how you become a father, in essence. You have to experience something, and this is how you become a father. So you don't just become a father. Well, you do in essence in life, but the son makes you the father, not the father makes you the, like, you become the father based upon having a son, and that's from you experiencing it, that the child teaches you to be a father. So so basically, in essence, this is what we are saying. Now that we've got into the simple mythological aspect of Saturn, you now understand that Saturn is actually a powerful generator, and obviously we could also say that Saturn is also linked to your last birth sign. So wherever your Saturn is in your birth chart could also have an interlink to who you were in your past life, and actually it will detail some aspects to that. Now, there's two cold planets, okay? The first cold planet is the moon, okay? It has no light of its own, so it's charged within itself by the sun. And there's also obviously Saturn, which is the planet with no, it's cold, it's another cold planet. Now, the two cold planets, Saturn and Moon, are but the same expression on two different scales of time. Okay, so the Moon travels a sign in 2.5 days. Okay, so every 2.5 days, the Moon changes sign. It moves very quickly. This is why every 28 days, you go through another lunar cycle. Okay, and so that links you to 28 years. Which is the Saturn return, or 30 years when you start your new circuit. Okay, so Saturn travels a sign in 2.5 years. So basically, when we look at both aspects, we realize that one is dealing with a cycle of a length, and one is dealing with a cycle of a short term. And each moon cycle tells you the initiation of Saturn. So, now, moon governs the physical birth or the spiritual death. So, the moon is our ascension into the world. So, we come through the sign of Cancer. And Cancer is who? The mother, the stomach. And we come through the mother. So, this is why the moon governs the physical birth or the physical death. Okay, and actually I'm just going to drop this in because I will be writing a book, but at the moment I'm not stating when it's going to be out. Now, in the age of Cancer, there was a connection, very strong connection to the earth. The moon people, or the Cancer people, were really in tune with the earth, and they had a very strong connection to the people who lived during the age of Taurus. And during the age of Taurus was when the time just before Egypt got destructed. And that was the time when, obviously, when by the end of the age of Taurus, that's when the Egyptian left, or the old Lemurian people left. And then obviously that was 6,000 years ago. But I'm not going to get into that. I just wanted to drop this in for those who are doing their research. I hope you are doing your research because it's really interesting and important too. So I'll be talking about that in my book. So Saturn governs the physical death and the spiritual birth. So this therefore means Saturn is actually the lord of initiation, and the moon is obviously the ascending point, coming into birth, This is why you're supposed to cry when someone is born, and you're supposed to laugh when someone dies, because that person is supposed to be moving on to a different or a higher perception of initiation. Okay, so now, okay, because I've just spoke about Lemuria, I'm going to talk about Lemuria again. Obviously, the Lemurians were the first people on this planet, and they seeded the planet. Now, the real name for Lemuria was called Mua. And if you want to get into the real understanding of that, you're going to have to look into the language of the Fugees. And they will tell you how it connects with that. And, okay. So now, right. Talking about Lemuria, for those who received the robe by reversing the direction of the will to come down into Scorpio willfully and sacrifice themselves to redeem their fellow beings from misery, Mars is the ruler. Ding dong. Bear this in mind. Rewind this if you don't get it, because it's very, very important what I've just said. So basically what happened was, during the time of Lemuria, Lemuria's got a strong connection with Mars. Ka'er obviously is Cairo. Ka'er is linked to the Moors. The Moors were the Lumoro or the Lumiere, or like in French, and the Lumen beings. And they obviously were, Ka'er means Mars. This is what I'm trying to say. And basically they were the people that were from Mars. And so they came to redo some of the works, or they came to save some of the people, or some of the people of Earth, through the channel of Mars. So that was one of the key aspects of Mars for within itself. Okay, and this is one of the reasons, okay, for Mars, one of the reasons why Mars finds its exaltation in Capricorn. So Mars is exalted in Capricorn. What does it mean? It means that Mars expresses its full potential in the sign of Capricorn. And this leads me on to, that's what I'm saying, it's going to get serious. This leads me on to the story of, oh man, don't tell me I lost the page. Well, we're going to get into this right now, so I want you to stay logged in, because you're going to understand where I'm going with this very soon. You're going to understand where I'm going with this very soon. So, this links us to the story of Mars, right? And the secret to Mars. Now, remember, the secret to Mars and what Mars has to do with in itself with becoming one of those disciples, or one of those lords that came to help, or comes like a Christ figure. It's almost like blood cells and white blood cells, and somehow the red blood cells have destructed themselves, so some other teams of the red blood cells are coming through to help to rebuild those red blood cells and replenish them. That's the best way to describe it. And so Mars represents the red blood cells. And in essence, it is really how it is. But I'm just kind of giving you the atomic structure of it, because everything is a layer upon layer upon layers. So, now, Hanuman represents Mars. Hanuman is a Martian figure. Okay? And so, now, we're going to talk about why Mars is exalted in Capricorn, and why Mars is very important to the journey of your Saturn return, and Saturn in general. Now, Hanuman is the best friend of Saturn in essence. Now, here's the secret to Hanuman. And Hanuman was actually recognized to the South Indians as opposed to the North Indians. And the reason for that, I will get into it right now. The animal of Shravana is the monkey. Okay, Shravana is a constellation in the sky, which is in the sign of, funny enough, it's in the sign of Capricorn. That gives you an understanding of, obviously, Capricorn governing Saturn. Okay, so, alright, now, Okay, the animal of Shavana is the monkey. So the animal of that constellation in the thick sky is the monkey. I don't want to lose you here, but just picture this. Every star sign has a degree, and it's 30 degrees. And Shravana governs a particular aspect of that degree. Okay? And so this is where the fixed star is located. It's called the lunar dimensions, but check this. Okay, so Hanuman, right, the popular god is in the form of a monkey, which is Shravana, in the constellation of Capricorn. He was known for his devotion to Rama, as well as his ability to withstand the challenges from Saturn. Someone can handle the challenges of Saturn? What? Okay, once when Saturn threatened to trouble him by his transit, a transit is when a planet moves and has a relationship with another planet. Once when Saturn threatened to trouble him by his transit, Hanuman carried him on his back and took him around the world a few times till Saturn begged him to put him back on the earth. So, okay, just to stop here, we can say this, that the reason why Mars is exalted in Capricorn is because of that. And in relation to the script that I read, I will reread it because then it will kind of make sense. Right, so for those who receive the robe by reversing the direction of the wheel to come down into Scorpio willfully and sacrifice themselves to redeem their fellow beings from misery, Mars is the ruler. So Hanuman is the aspect of Mars, and knowing itself it's already ascended, it comes back as a teacher to teach them what went wrong. So in essence, Hanuman is like the higher aspect which will help you in the transit of Saturn. Bear this in mind, because Mars is the first planet of heat, and it represents Aries, the first sign, the ram, a sacrifice of the ram. So, okay, so let's get back into this. Bear in mind, Hanuman is Mars. Hanuman carried him on his back and took him around the world a few times till Saturn begged him to put him back on the earth. Since then, Saturn gave a special immunity to the worshippers of Hanuman, that he will not trouble them by transit. This is why those who have difficult Saturn transits worship Hanuman. Now, obviously, you could see Hanuman as the perpansy, the monkey, but the monkey has a specific power, and this is where you get strength. Hanuman represents strength to wake up every morning and to keep building. So Shravana, which is the constellation, okay, Shravana people who are rooted in their spiritual practice are not afraid of challenging transits, just like Hanuman. So if you have your Saturn in Shravana or a planet in Shravana, which is a constellation, then you'll be able to kind of identify your powers. They develop the ability to deal with testing times and take the good with the bad in the same vein. Hanuman was celibate, and many Shravana people choose celibacy. So that is the key to Saturn here. So Saturn has a strong connection to Mars, and Mars is to do with what we do. So if you want to know how to work with your Saturn, look at where your Mars is. Your Mars will tell you how to blend the energy so you can overtake the energies of Saturn. So therefore means you can work with Saturn. Because remember, Saturn moves through the 28 to 30 days. And so therefore means this is where Saturn becomes the problem. Okay. Now, okay. Alright, so the potency or the numeric composition of Capricorn, which is obviously governed by Saturn, is number 10. Just kind of just throw things in. Right, so, okay, the Alpha and Omega of Revelation, again, this number marks the return of the Savior. So, again, the 10th sign governing Saturn, they're one and the same, is governing the Savior. Okay, so, okay. Right, so now, right, so what I wanted to get into is the higher quality of Saturn. And this is something that you're going to need, because now we're getting into the rings of Saturn and the potency and the importance of Saturn. Right, don't forget you can always get my pendants on my website. I got the what do you call it, the amethyst pendant, which is good for clearing the mind, the lapis lazuli, which is good for the throat, the green onyx, which is good for the heart, and scalar pendants, which is good for energy and keeping you strong throughout the day. So, right, this is where we get deep. For all you who are in your Saturn returns. Right, so Saturners. Okay, right, I love this part. The whole activity of the universe has two phases to the mind of man. One is how it is, the other is how it is becoming. The second aspect marks a periodical deviation from the first. The first is always shadowed by the second. The first can never be understood. It can only be realized when we can retrace our path in the workings of the second phase. So, what I mean, or what it's trying to say, is that, okay, here we are. This is a bad drawing. Actually, let me just do it like that. This is a bad drawing. This is bad. I don't even know what I'm doing. Actually, let's put it this way. This is the smartest way. Right. Imagine this, the planet Saturn. And this is the rings of Saturn. So the first ring is more like going through the phase of Saturn without actually understanding what it is, but only having the intuition to feed it. So the first is always shadowed by the second. So the first is always shadowed by the second. The first is always shadowed by the second. So the first is this ring, the rings of Saturn. Obviously the rings of Saturn has a shadow. And the second, okay, all right, so, okay, right. The first is always shadowed by the second. The first can never be understood because it can only be realized when we retrace our path in the workings of the second phase. So the second phase is 30. When we go through our second phase is when we go through the aspect of experiencing life truthfully. This is where you can either break your habit or you can go back to your old habit and Saturn will just break you into bits. That's the two keys. So, right. The first phase is concealed in the symbolism of the second phase. So imagine that the ring and the second ring is concealed. So the second phase, right? So the first phase is concealed in the symbolism of the second phase and is revealed only as an allegory. So the second phase is revealed as an allegory because it will actually give you what you're supposed to be dealing with. Because by the time you reach 30, you should know who you are. And by knowing who you are, that's when you're ready to become a true adult and to have children. Away from that, if you have children a bit earlier, then obviously it happens. But when you become a father, a true father, Lord of Karma, mother also, you then are ready to have children. Okay, so the second phase exits as a necessary limitation to all created beings, whether a man, a planet, or a cosmic entity. This limitation is the effect of a ring, and the ring is the cosmic principle of Saturn, located in Saturn, the planet Saturn. So planet Saturn in itself has a ring, and the ring represents limitation. So the limitation in the ring is actually what holds you into place. So therefore means if you did not have the ring, you would never go beyond your faith. And this is why Uranus, okay, they talk about this golden age. Uranus has planted its seed into the earth. And Uranus had to wait 24,000 years or 26,000 years for Saturn to go through its return. So the 26,000 years is actually veiling the 28 years of Saturn, or 30 years of Saturn. In essence, there's a will going on here, and that is to do with it gathering its energies through the great year. They call it the great year, and each sign has 2,100 years, just like the age of Pisces, which we are still in, kind of, and moving in out of, and so therefore means within itself, when Uranus represents Prometheus. So Uranus gives off the lightning. Saturn is not ready because it can't take this potential energy, which is too much. And so when Saturn gets ready to absorb that energy, it then basically what it does, it then becomes the new one, and it becomes the initiate. So Saturn becomes the initiate because it would have overcome its challenges. But that was just me going off. I shouldn't have even broke that down, but it's just something that I wanted to add. So basically the rings of limitation is needed. Okay. Right, so alright, so basically what it is, the rings of limitation, it is the shell of an egg for the chick inside. This cosmic principle which produces Saturn and its effect is called Lokalaka Pavata. Okay, alright, so, okay, cool. Right, so there's a few things that I wanted to drop in. Alright, so like I wanted to talk about Saturn and in relations to Mars again. So Mars makes man sow the seeds, while Saturn influences the time and manner of harvest. So remember when I was talking about the concept of you are being judged by your action as opposed to for your actions. That kind of relates back to that, because Mars makes you sow your seeds and Saturn influences the time and manner of harvest. So the time, this is why it's called the Lord of Time. Saturn is the Lord of Time, so it takes time, but you have to harvest it. And so there's the key, right? So, alright, okay, cool. The time sense of man is governed by Saturn, right? And man is made to wait by his own limitation. So this is what Saturn does. It will delay you like crazy. It will delay everything in your life until you learn. And if you don't learn it, I'm sorry, Saturn's going to give you trouble throughout the rest of your life until you learn it. And it can even kill you. So delay, disappointments and obstacles present themselves to the mind of man through the effects of Saturn. So Saturn will create so much obstructions, and trust me, it will. Saturn rules over the ring of horizon, which is only a limitation relative to an observer. So as you are observing your life, you think, oh my God, what is going on? It is only a limitation based upon your observation of it in the wrong way. When you go back through the wheel, now this is where the mystical astrological side comes in. When you go back through the wheel, meaning that if you study astrology, you go back into the wheel and you look at each sign that Saturn has been going through in your life and where you found challenges, and then you adjust and make the changes according to that sign that Saturn was working with, and therefore means you're able to deal with the challenges of Saturn return, because you've gone through 28 years or 30 years of your life, which details and describes the mystical aspect of what Saturn is trying to teach you. And the hardest aspect of your life throughout the 28 to 30 years is basically you looking back into what happened during your early years. And during your early years, you will get the mystical initiation, which will lead you on to the next aspect of your life. Okay. So therefore means Saturn therefore throws man into his own required experience. And so therefore means you will need to retrace your path back into the globe to kind of, or into the earth to kind of see where the challenges were in. Okay, so basically, right, so, okay, Saturn governs time in the sense of the man, and all the periodic of other planets bear its definite relationship with the periodicity of Saturn. The average daily motion of the moon is equal to the average annual motion of Saturn. okay, the average daily motion of the sun is equal to the average monthly motion of this planet. In other words, a day of the sun on his scale is equal to a month, right? So, you know, a day of Saturn is equal to a month of the sun. Okay, so this is where the key is, all right? So, his scale is equal to a month on the Saturnian plane of consciousness, and is also a 12th part of the day in the lunar place of consciousness. Herein lies a great clue to find the cycle of rebirth of man, because the moon brings souls to earth. Okay, remember, the moon brings souls into earth through the sign of Cancer, right? And Saturn takes them away by death, while the sun makes the soul live through life in birth. So, in knowing this, you can actually trace back your past life, and you can actually trace the link between the sun, the moon, and Saturn to figure out the karmic pattern of your lot of life, and the current life, how to work with the current situation in this life, dealing with the deeper layers of this life, and knowing how to take advantage of the passage within it. So you look at the moon, you look at Mars, you look at the sun. The sun, Saturn, and the moon will give you the karmic pattern and the past life connection. Your sun sign is linked to Saturn. Your Saturn sign is actually linked to your past life karma. Because karma is governed by Saturn, your karma is linked to your ego. Your ego was once your father. Your father is now has no ego, so therefore mean it has fear. Or if it has fear, if it doesn't have fear, it has challenge. The challenge is actually felt 2 to 3 times to experience what the pain that you've given to others in the previous life. And so it gives you the shadow. Remember about the story of Saturn and the sun? The shadow aspect of you is actually Saturn. So now you have to find the light within that shadow and heal that shadow. So therefore means you, in life, you always have to experience both sides. You could never experience just the good. You have to experience the good and the bad. It's part of the pendulum. In the law of Kabbalion, which is the laws of Tahuti, you have the pendulum. And polarity is governed by pendulum, the pendulum. So therefore means you have to experience the negative and the positive. And if you don't experience it in this life, guess what? You will experience it in your next future life. So that's the rings, that's the powers of Saturn. So this is how Saturn works. So Saturn is actually a good planet. As long as you work with Hanuman, Mars, you will understand the connection to it. And there's a very strong link to the two. And Mars, obviously, because I didn't really kind of emphasize it, Mars is actually the drive to it. So, and once you work with Mars, once you do the work, funny enough, I got a red pen. Once you do the work, you will get out of the ring. So that's the key. So basically, just to end it, right, so this is the ring. So your second phase is only going to heal itself only if you've understood the first ring. Limitation is only based upon you not agreeing to the ring. Once you agree to the ring, this is why it's the Lord of the Ring. This is the Lord of the Ring. This is the Lord of the Rings. This ring here. Once you've agreed to the ring and understood the Lord of the Ring, you can now escape the ring and create a new ring. And this is where Uranus comes in. Sudden change. This is why sudden change is actually the in-between between Saturn and Uranus. There's something that I wanted to add if I can find it. That's only if I can find it. Only if I can find it. Okay, only if I can find it. Let's see if I can find it. Basically, I wanted to add something. It's to do with, okay, I can't find it, but I'll break it down anyways because I do kind of know part of it. So, Saturn is a cold planet in health. It obviously governs the bones and all of that stuff. It's the last kind of aspect of man to manifest, to be born. See, it has to construct the bones and hold itself steady. Saturn is actually governed by Capricorn. Capricorn is actually let's put it this way, the white dragon. The white dragon. The white dragon is actually what holds its tail, or it holds its lower part, which is like a crocodile, and or you could call it the mountain goat, and has the goat face on the earth. So it has the ability to go on earth as well as in the sea. And because it does that, basically its vehicle is actually the sea part aspect of it. And the sea, which is the surface, the ocean, is actually linked to Neptune. So Saturn has a connection to Neptune as well as Uranus, because it's able to go on the air through its goat face, but it's actually the white dragon in its ancient oldest form. And basically it has the possibility to go on earth through the air, which is Aquarius. Once it's mastered the waters and moves through the waters, and it also has mastered the earth, which is, this is why it holds itself on the earth and in the waters. So basically the air as well, so it has the aspect of the air, the waters and the earth. So this is why it makes Capricorn and Saturn a very strong connection. That's what I wanted to add, but this can kind of give you the signification to once you've become initiated, because initiation takes part at around the age of 30, or I would say 33. This is where the crucifixion comes through, the 33 vertebrae in the back of your spine, which is the 33 linked to being crucified and reaching initiation after your Saturn return, because then you become a new person. That new person knew or knows that it now goes upon its new cycle, and so you reborn, you become 13, and that's where obviously you come through into Earth. So 13 is not a bad number. Once again, it's the 13th sperm that makes it through. Remember, orgone-energy.com, and don't forget to have a look at some of the stuff. If you want to get a consultation or want deeper understanding of your birth chart, then please feel free to contact me, and I will go into detail. Now I'm doing readings through Skype as opposed to person at present, because of current situations, and just dealing with some health stuff as well. So basically I would do the readings through online at present, and also I will also go into different aspects if you want to go into your Saturn return and stuff, and we'll talk about other bits and bobs if you want to get into it. But in relation to any other stuff, just feel free to check my website. If you have any questions, do message me. Sorry if I take a while to get back to you. If you order from me, you get it on time. If you don't get it on time, it's just a parcel. But just keep in touch, keep watching the videos. I will be back for another series, but each video is always layering the aspect of another video, and so we're going into different aspects of it through layers and layers. So I needed to do this video because I feel like I might experience a lot of people that are going through Saturn, and in order for them to understand Saturn, they have to understand the Mars, the Sun. And even if you're not in your Saturn return, Saturn becomes alive after your Saturn return. So trust me, it becomes your best friend as opposed to your enemy. So yeah, thank you for watching. Have a great time, and we'll be in touch soon as you keep watching the videos. And yeah, be in touch, just message me, feel free. I'm alive, so feel free to message me. Thank you.